أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. In the name of God, most merciful, ever merciful. And may God's peace and blessings be upon His holy Prophet Muhammad and the purified members of his household and progeny. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Respected sisters, dear brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And thank you for joining us once again in this latest lecture in our present course, where we try to explore how Islam instructs us to study various types of knowledge, at times with general principles, and at times with very specific instructions on this or that type of knowledge. We will inshallah continue where we left off. So on the agenda today, there will be indications that will continue on a theme that we began with, the importance of prioritization, and that knowing that there is an overabundance of knowledge and overabundance of information, we have to make an effort to select accordingly. And we shall see, inshallah, more and more clues and indications and passages that keep reminding us that it is impossible to learn everything. So be wise with your time and be wise with your efforts, so that what you are learning actually gives you the greatest value for the time and energy that you are putting into learning. We are still at the beginning where we're discussing the general principles. So we said that before we go into the specific instructions that we have, or the instructions about the specific types of knowledge, and we mentioned them in the introduction, where we said, for instance, our knowledge will say one of the types of knowledge you should learn is religious knowledge, as an example, or knowledge about the natural world, or knowledge about how the world works. Inshallah, all of this will come and we will go into detail on what that could mean and why. We also have the instructions in our religion that are more general. Before we go into these types of knowledge, there are general principles that will be applicable, that will allow us to prioritize. At times, the religion is prioritizing for me. It is telling me exactly what I should be learning and what I shouldn't be learning, perhaps, as we shall see. And there are times when religion is not telling me this or that type of knowledge, but it is giving me general principles. In general, you should be learning these types of knowledge, not as a specific type, but these types of knowledge because they produce a specific outcome. For instance, as we saw, go learn knowledge that fixes you, where you have a shortcoming, where you know that you have an improvement to make. Focus on those and go learn them, for instance. So we're going to go through those, inshallah. Today, the focus is going to be on two new general principles that our religion focuses on. The first one is depth. So when you go and learn knowledge, that knowledge should be learned with depth. And we're going to see that depth does not necessarily mean you become a specialist. And perhaps in a way, but it doesn't need to be only in this way. The second principle is tied to it, but the second principle is a standalone too. And we will see that in our religion, not all knowledge that you are learning is necessarily theoretical knowledge. That our knowledge gives a lot of importance to experience, to things that you learned by doing, by going through life. It gives a lot of importance to that. And perhaps some of these hadith, some of these narrations, as we said, the point of these series or these courses is really to bring us back to directly to the scripture, to the original scriptures. And so we're focused on going to see, do we actually have a hadith, a narration from the Holy Prophet, from an imam that tells us about this? Or are these just us inferring and concluding and coming up with our own theories? A quick recap of where we left off things based on what we covered mainly in the last lecture. In the last lecture, we focused on the idea of prioritization, that there is too much knowledge to learn, therefore you have to be selective and prioritize. So how do I prioritize? or what do I prioritize? We saw the ahadith that talk about the need to prioritize whatever type of knowledge is going to be beneficial. One. So it's not this or that knowledge, it's whatever the outcome of that knowledge is for you. So, beneficial. Two, improving your state. Whatever knowledge improves your state. And we saw that there are hadith specifically saying that. This is not us inferring once again. Understand what your state is and what needs improvement. Three, we saw that there is a focus, especially in the hadith of Imam Ali alayhi salam, where there is a focus on finding your shortcomings. There's a difference between I'm good, but I could be better, versus there is something broken that needs fixing. And we saw these ahadith saying, go find the types of knowledge that fix you. It means there is something broken. There's something not working the way it's supposed to. Imam Ali alayhi salam, we saw in his ahadith, he was focused on the fix, the remedy, the correction. Okay? More than that. The ahadith are all using a tone that is specific to you and I, which means tailored, which means personalized, which means what may be useful and beneficial knowledge for you is not the useful, beneficial knowledge for me. Maybe my priority is a different one than yours. There's no one size fits all here. Each one of us has to go out of our way to do an introspection, to reassess ourselves, our lives, our priorities, what we're trying to accomplish, are things working properly or not, and then to try to identify the source of that and what type of knowledge do I need to fix that. We saw, and we will continue to see today, inshallah, I'm starting to inch towards religious knowledge. We won't get to religious knowledge today, but inshallah, I'll try to introduce it with the idea that when you look at enough of these ahadith, you're going to see that it's very difficult to always distinguish them from the spiritual religious aspect. And we're going to come back to that, inshallah, in the next lecture. We're going to see that there's two ways to understand religious types of knowledge. Some of them, I'm going to call them now foundational. There is a way to look at religious knowledge as the foundation of who you are. And there are types of religious knowledge that are much more technical. How do I recite Qur'an? How do I perform my prayer? This is very technical knowledge. But there's also religious knowledge that defines who you are. Every type and piece of information that you will get after, including religious knowledge, will be defined by the foundational knowledge. This is why you give importance to something or not. That you think something is worth your time, has value, has meaning, how it fits in your life, who you are as a person, where you're going in your life. All of that is also religious knowledge. And we're going to see, and we started to see that there are a lot of ahadith that seem to be talking about things that are very practical day-to-day matters of a lot of our lives that we're supposed to learn as a knowledge. And a part of the statement is, and also learn religion, and also remember God, and also fix your heart. Which means that no matter what you're looking at, it's impossible to completely dissociate all of these types of knowledge and anything we will mention in this series from religion entirely, even though we are doing that intentionally. To show that our religion is saying you have to learn a lot more than the technically religious knowledge. You have to learn knowledge that is useful for you in your life, whatever that means. But you can't dissociate that from your foundation is going to be religion. So we're going to come back to that, inshallah, in the next lecture. We already started to see, and that will also be part of the next lecture, we started to see that there are hadith that are openly telling us there are types of knowledge that are obligatory, that are necessary. So we're going to have to start classifying the types of knowledge into what knowledge is a must-have, obligatory, versus a very nice to have and recommended, versus perhaps one we stay neutral to, indifferent, versus perhaps discouraged, all the way to potentially forbidden. And we started to see a hadith talk and use this language. Why would a type of knowledge be forbidden, for instance? The importance that the knowledge leads to, some of the things that were mentioned explicitly until now, that you become someone who knows how to better submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That one was mentioned right away very directly. That you know what your immediate needs are. Your immediate needs today might be very different than they were 2 years ago, or they will be in 5 years from now. And it could be things that are very religious, and they could be things that have nothing to do with religion. If suddenly I'm about to start working in the stock market, I should go and educate myself about what it means to work in the stock market from a fiqh perspective. This is an immediate need in my life now. I'm about to become a doctor. I need to understand, is there fiqh related to all of that or not? I'm about to become an engineer. There are responsibilities related to that. This is me at a specific point in my life. In 5 years, I may be in a very different place. It's not necessarily religious knowledge, but it has a religious ramification. And sometimes it's entirely religious knowledge. I need to go to Hajj now. There's a lot of details. If you study Hajj technically from a fiqh sense and you want to go in depth, there are volumes you have to go through. There's a lot of articles and a lot of permutations and a lot of ifs and a lot of things related to timing and distance and direction and so on. Do you need to study all of that right now? All of that is super relevant, useful information for you now. It's all fiqh. And fiqh is so praised and so important. What an amazing thing to become a faqih. You could easily spend the next 3 years of your life only studying Hajj. Articles of fiqh related to Hajj. Do you need that right now? Is this an immediate need in your life? No. Same thing that would apply to a lot of other items and articles of faith and Islamic law. We're not saying that Islamic law is not important, but what is most important for you now? What is your immediate need? What is your current situation that should force you to go learn certain things so that, as we saw in the ahadith, so that your deeds are accepted, that you cannot perform your deeds without that type of knowledge. If I don't know how to pray, I should start by knowing how to pray. If I haven't fasted properly and Shahr Ramadan is about to come in 2 months, I should go start reading a little bit on Shahr Ramadan. This is an immediate need right now. We saw the ahadith that talk about the necessity of learning what your duties and responsibilities are and what knowledge is required for them. If suddenly, and inshallah all of you become a parent, this is a completely new set of duties and responsibilities coming your way. You didn't have a child before, now you're about to have a child. You got married, you're about to get married. This is a new set of duties and responsibilities that are coming your way. Your situation is changing. What are your duties and responsibilities? What knowledge is required so that you understand them and discharge yourself appropriately of these duties and responsibilities? We saw the ahadith mention a lot the heart and the spirituality, and we will come back to that inshallah. The self and understanding and knowing the self and everything that it leads to, we saw, and we will come back to that inshallah again. And the importance of gaining knowledge and giving importance to knowledge that leads to long-term effects. And we said this is important because usually this is not the thing that may be intuitive for us. I may not focus on things that lead to long-term effects. You have to be a bit more of a strategic person with foresight, with an ability to see beyond the immediate, to understand that if I do this now, in 3 years or 5 years or 50 years, there will be tremendous benefits. And of course, ultimately, the afterlife. The ability to have foresight, to see that your life, your situation, your state will never be what it is today. This is always temporary. It may be temporary for a week or a month or a year or 10 years, but everything in this world is temporary and we're always moving towards something else. The linkages with action and outcome. Inshallah, those are clear. So every piece of knowledge that you gain should always be something that you can translate into action. It's not just raw data and information that we are accumulating. We saw, very interestingly, the importance that knowledge leads to autonomy, self-sufficiency, so that you become less reliant and less dependent on others in your thinking and in your action. And we saw both ahadith. And then the general effect of knowledge, and this is our conclusion from the last lecture, the general effect of the knowledge is much more important until now. From all the ahadith that we looked at, the general effect that the knowledge is going to have on me is much more important than the type of knowledge I'm learning. Inshallah, that is clear. Okay. So inshallah, today we continue where we left off. The next general principle is depth. And I'm not going to spend too many hadith on this, and this is perhaps a hadith I may come back to later in the series I'm debating. There's a lot that we can say about this hadith. So for now, I'll just highlight the things that I think should be clear. This is a famous hadith, these are famous words, and it is available in there are variants of this hadith. Some of the wording, that last word you'll see in every sentence, might be a little different in some of the variants, but this is a very well-known hadith. It's an authentic hadith. It's in Kitab al-Kafi and many other very authentic sources attributed to Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. So he says, ألا لا خير في علم ليس فيه تفهم ألا لا خير في قراءة ليس فيها تدبر ألا لا خير في عبادة لا فقه فيها ألا لا خير في نسك لا ورع فيه. So he says, indeed, there is no good in knowledge or in a knowledge in which there is no deep understanding. You have knowledge, but you don't understand the knowledge that you have. It has no fihm. It has no deep understanding. Next sentence. Indeed, there is no good. I translated it here as recitation. Generally, it could also be reading, qira'ah. I think the Imam here is explicitly referring to religion. And that's why I may come back to this hadith when I talk about religion. We could say the Imam is referring to any reading, and it does apply to any reading for sure. The spirit of this hadith is about depth. But let's assume both. The Imam is saying there is no good in reading in which there is no reflection. That you don't reflect on what you are reading. You're just reading. Indeed, there is no good in worship in which there is no comprehension or there's no fiqh. Which tells you, I want to come back to comment on each one of these, which tells you that perhaps fiqh is not just being able to know how to stand and sit and perform your ruku' and sujood properly. Indeed, there is no good in devotion, in acts of devotion, in rituals of devotion, in which there is no God-fearing, no wara', no fear from God. You perform the prayer, you perform the worship, you perform the hajj, but there's no fear of God. You feel nothing. You may not even be aware of God's existence, but you're performing the motions, you're going through the movements. So clearly the Imam here, he's stating, he could have simply summarized all of this in one little sentence, but he is giving us examples. And these examples, perhaps the Imam is reacting to things that are very real and happening in his life, which were, by the way, the case. A lot of those who were around the Imam were supposed to be people who are very religious. And perhaps none more than the Khawarij, who outwardly were supposed to be people of great worship and great devotion. Many of them worshipped and memorized the Qur'an entirely by heart, and so on and so forth. So when the Imam is reacting this way, he's also listing specific cases and specific examples that people recognize. This is a reality that you see people performing devotion, acquiring knowledge. The Imam is talking about things that people can see and live. And also the examples that Imam is giving should be, to be honest with you, shocking. The Imam is listing things that for many of us, if you know enough ahadith, if you know enough about religion, you would never put in question any of these things. Who would put in question the importance of reciting the Qur'an, for instance? We believe that reciting the Qur'an, even if I don't know what I'm reciting the Qur'an by itself is a blessing. It's good for me. It's a healing. It brings blessing in my life. Performing an act of worship. I may not be in the mood right now. I'm tired. I'm still performing the act of worship. Would I question that this is a good thing or not? No. Yet the Imam is questioning. The wording he's using is supposed to shock us. And that's what we need. The Imam is trying to shake us. He's going for the things that to us should be without saying these are good. And the Imam says there's no good in this thing. The Imam is not saying don't do it. The Imam is not talking about fiqh here. The Imam is not talking about what is wajib and what is haram. So that you say, oh, then suddenly, if this is not the effect I'm getting out of my prayer, then I don't pray. The Imam is not saying that. The Imam is saying that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prescribed these matters, He didn't prescribe these matters for themselves in themselves. He prescribed them as a bridge to something else. If you are not able to use them as a bridge to that thing, then you're completely losing out. You're not being able to use them as a means to an end. You have made those things the end in themselves. But they're not supposed to be end in themselves. And this is something, by the way, especially if you go at the beginning of the holy month of Ramadan, we always recite some of these ahadith, how important it is that our fasting is more than just going hungry and thirsty. And we have many ahadith that talk about how many are those who perform their prayers and the only thing that they get from their prayer is standing and sitting. And how many are those who perform prayers at night and all they get from their prayers is staying up at night. And how many are those who perform their fasting and all they get from their fasting is hunger and thirst. We have a lot of ahadith that talk about this. In fact, we have worse. We have ahadith that say there are those who recite the Qur'an and the Qur'an curses them while they are reciting the Qur'an. In these cases, at least the Imams are being neutral. You're doing something and you're not getting the full benefit from it. There are cases where it's becoming detrimental. When you read in the Qur'an is telling you do this and you go and you do the exact opposite. You're making a mockery of the Qur'an. You either believe these are the words of God, He says go pray, and then you turn around and you say, you don't really feel like praying. In any case, so ألا لا خير في علم ليس فيه تفهم. So we start from the knowledge. So knowledge by itself on its own, the Imam is saying this is not good enough. You have to have fihm. You have to have kind of an intellectual depth to the knowledge that you're acquiring. Don't memorize data. It has to go a little bit deeper than that. That's what will allow you to know how to use that knowledge. And a lot of what we have been talking about is actually this point. That's why we keep saying it's not about the type of knowledge. It's about the effect of the knowledge. And a lot of this effect of the knowledge doesn't come from the knowledge, it comes from you. That you actually do something with the knowledge that you acquired. Knowledge is not going to magically transform you. Knowledge is the tool. If you don't have the tool, you can't do anything. Once the tool comes, you have to do something with it yourself. You need fihm. You need the deeper understanding to be able to use that knowledge. Then the Imam, when he says, أَلَا لَا خَيْرَ فِي قِرَاءَةٍ لَيْسَ فِيهَا تَدَبُّرٍ. If we want to open it up a little bit about reading. There are a lot of people who think, so we go beyond recitation of the Qur'an. Recitation of the Quran should be without saying. The Quran is full of verses that are reprimanding and criticizing those who hear or who recite the Quran without doing tadabbur, without going to the deeper reflection. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that there is rust upon their hearts, that there is a lock upon their hearts. What is the matter with them? That they do not perform tadabbur when they recite the Quran. This is heavy, harsh language. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Will they not deeply reflect on the Quran? Or are there locks? أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا. Have locks been placed upon their hearts? Why is it that they don't perform this tadabbur? بَلْ رَانَ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ. Right? No, indeed, a rust or sulliness has become a covering over their hearts. All of this leading to your inability to do tadabbur, to go beyond the words. But even beyond the Quran, in general, in reading, we spent a lot of time talking about the intellectual in our communities and the need to create an intellectual class. People who are thinkers, who have all the tools to be thinkers, to understand the world and then to understand our reality and to see what is required so that our communities move and advance and evolve and mature to the next level. That we're always improving, to be strategic, to make the right connections and all of that. Amazing. And a lot of that requires reading. Not necessarily, but one of the easiest ways is through reading. But reading in itself is not enough. And the key is not, therefore I just go read. And sometimes, unfortunately, there's also a lot of reading that is entirely meaningless. Reading is by itself a good activity. But in general, if you look at the amount of time that is required, the amount of effort, you are putting in a lot of intellectual effort. A lot of your life is going into this reading. This is an investment. You have to see it as an investment of your time. The return has to be worth it. So if I just spend my life reading, 15 to 50 novels a year, I'm not sure how good of a reading that is. And how good of an investment of your time that is. You have to be honest with yourself that you're using this as entertainment. Someone else is watching TV, someone else is doing something else as their entertainment. You're doing that as your entertainment. This is not real reading. This is not the purpose of the deep reading that you're supposed to be doing. And this will not make of you an intellectual. That you have read, the 50 top classics worldwide. I'm not sure that this will make of you. It could. I guess if you're a specialist in literature or something, it might be useful. I'm not saying there's absolutely no use of that. But you have to be more selective. And it's not reading to read. And it should not also be, unless your job is to be an intellectual. When I put myself in this situation and I sit in front of you and I talk about these topics, there is a part of it that also means I have to be aware of what's going on in the world. This is an extra duty that I have. You may not have that duty. I need to understand, what are the latest books that have come out? What are they saying? How might they influence the youth and the thinkers of the community? How might they be presented in courses of university that affect the people? Are we prepared? Do we have the tools? Are there new ideas or old recycled ideas? I feel that's part of my job. I'm tailoring what I'm saying to my situation. You have to do the same. If it's not your state, your situation, your reality, you have to say that in the time that I have, in the limited time, where should I be putting this time if I am reading, if I'm listening to audiobooks? In any case, the next, ألا لا خير في عبادة لا فقه فيها. Usually we interpret fiqh as being the articles of Islamic law that will allow me to do the ibadah. The Imam here is saying clearly this person can do the ibadah. So this person is not lacking that type of fiqh. What type of fiqh is it? It's the type of knowledge that allows you to get the real benefit from this prayer or this fasting or this recitation of the Quran. That's the fiqh. And I've said again and again, when Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, they use fiqh, they don't use it in the way and in the sense that we use it. First of all, fiqh is much more associated in their words to aqa'id or haqa'iq or ma'arif as they call them, which is beliefs, which is your worldview, not the actions and the articles of faith related to Islamic law, the details of Islamic law. That is a small part of it, but that's not the real main reason for calling it fiqh. Fiqh means deep understanding. Literally, that's what it means. When you go to the depths of something with your understanding, that's tafaqquh and fiqh. But Ahlul Bayt are using it as a technical term, specialized term, and then with time, we have started to use it. We took that and we kept evolving it to the point where we have it today, which is a very limited, narrow space within Islamic law. Fiqh means now Islamic law. The Imam is not referring to Islamic law. He's saying there is no good in a worship that does not have, here it's comprehension, or deep understanding, or whatever type of knowledge you need that allows you to fully benefit from that act of worship. The Quran, for instance, says, إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ تَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ. Prayer, your ritual prayer, forbids you from indecency and wrongdoing. That's the real prayer. That's the real purpose of prayer. If I perform my prayer and I don't know that this is the real purpose of my prayer, and I think the real purpose is just to stand and prostrate and go kneel down and sit back up and say these words, I'm lacking the fiqh of the prayer, the real meaning behind this prayer that I'm supposed to be aspiring to. And if I'm not getting that from my prayer, I have to go and work on that. The focus here is not because I'm doing my ruku' wrong, as important as it is to do your acts of worship the right way. If you're not getting this outcome from your prayer, it's not because your ruku' or your sujood has some sort of technical detail missing. There's something happening at your state of mind, at the level of your heart, at the level of your soul, and perhaps at the level of your knowledge. Do you know what this prayer is supposed to mean? Why are you performing this prayer? Beyond just checkmark, I did it, we move on. If God prescribed it, certainly there is more to it than just repeating this 5 times a day, every single day for the rest of my life. The same thing can be said with أَلَا لَا خَيْرَ فِي نُسُكٍ لَا وَرَعَ فِيهِ. This is to have the presence of God in front of you at all times. That makes you in awe, that makes you in fear, aware, mindful, whatever you want to call it. This is your wara'. This is your fear of God because you know that He is there. And you're not just performing nusuk. You become a monk. Just performing ritual after ritual. That's tanassuk. Right? Devotional, ritualistic devotion. That in itself is not a problem to perform devotion and rituals. But it has to be accompanied with the right level of awareness of God. Otherwise, you're just mechanically doing things and perhaps not fully benefiting from them. In any case, all of that to come back and say, this is as one example, as a general principle of many, many other ahadith, and I've talked about this in the past too, especially in the sayings and in the words of Imam Ali alayhi salam. We see this in the sayings of other Imams, especially in the words of Imam Ali. His standards are very high. And this is not random. And this is not to make things difficult. This is because they want their followers, Ahlul Bayt want their followers to be of a higher standard. They want the elites. They want those who are distinguished. those who are willing to put in more effort. This is very clear in their teachings. If you're happy with the minimum, follow the masses. If you want to follow Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, you're going to have to put in a little bit more of an effort. You have to earn that right. To be their lover, their follower, their Shia, these are very specific terms that they use in their ahadith. And each one of them has a rank. And each one of them comes with duties and responsibilities. And so this is part of it too. That whatever you do it with a higher level of seriousness. When I acquire knowledge, this becomes a general principle that I am going to the bottom of it. And we have a lot of our scholars, by the way, who have talked a lot about this. Those scholars that many people refer to, they ask them because they seem to be prodigies and they seem to be geniuses. And when they ask them, how do you become who you are? How much do you read? Because they think it's all about reading. Many of them answer, yes, I may read a lot more than you, true, but I didn't become this way because I read more than you. That's not the key. The secret is not because I read more. The secret is because I think more. When I read something, I replay it in my mind and I look at it from every way. And I try to see what the connections are, what the meanings are, what could I have missed, and how do I criticize it? Who else said this? How did they say it? How did others understand it? Are you doing that when you're reading? Maybe not. Maybe it's a superficial layer of the words come in, I understand 20%, 50%, 80%, depending on your focus. My experience with people when they say I read, if I push a little, I see a lot of words and a lot of sentences were probably missed. They're going through the words. You're going through the lines, but your mind is elsewhere. You're not reading. Stop. We often talk about philosophy because I think it gives us good tools, so I often refer to it. Philosophy is a great case in point. If you miss a couple of words, you should stop. You need to go back. Not because this is kind of a sacred revelation, because there's depth and it's abstract notions. They're carefully chosen words. So if you're just skimming over them quickly, you probably completely miss the idea. The nuance. There's a subtle argument. There's something that was said. In any case. The second general principle. This one I mention because oftentimes we associate learning with theory. Just information and theory coming our way. Whether it's reading, whether it's attending classes, it's theoretical knowledge. Like we're doing right here, right now. The opposite of experience. And in our religion, experience is given a lot of weight. It is considered something very positive. And we don't do enough of that. So another general principle is that not everything we're about to mention in the rest of the course has to equally be translated as this is a book you're reading or a class you're attending when we say knowledge. A lot of this can be acquired by experience and living life. Especially if you now know this and you keep this in mind as you go through your life experiences. So a few ahadith here, I don't need to go through a lot of commentary on them. The first one, and many of these are from Imam Ali alayhi salam. There are only a couple that I took from elsewhere. The first one, Imam Ali alayhi salam says, التجارب علم مستفاد. So there's one way to understand this wording in Arabic. But let's go with the simple, straightforward. Experience is an acquired knowledge. So we start with this as Imam Ali alayhi salam is saying experience is a type of knowledge. It's a valid type of knowledge. That by itself is a principle. And it's something that you gain. It's acquired. Al-ayyam tufidu at-tajarub. The passing of days, the passing of time life will give you that, will give you experiences, will give you the benefit of experiences. Something to keep in mind. This is important. Generally speaking, more days, more life, more time equals more knowledge. More benefit of these experiences. Experiential knowledge. This is not nothing. The third hadith. ثمرة التجربة حسن الاختبار. Or ثمرة التجربة حسن الاختيار. Whether it's a ba or a ya. The fruit of experience, as you gain more and more experience, the benefit of this experience is to have an ability to choose better or an ability to test better. This allows you that in life. The choose better, perhaps. The test better is a different spin. You are better positioned to assess things, to evaluate things, to examine things, to criticize things. التجربة تثمر الاعتبار. Experience, I'm going to add from me, is supposed to. Experience will give you a yield, a fruit, which is اعتبار, that you learn lessons. It's supposed to. Does it always? Unfortunately, no. But what it's supposed to do, experience is supposed to give you lessons learned. Ibrah. Or as I wrote here, a bridge. The ibrah is what? Is that a crossing? Ma'bar. Ta'bir. All of that is the idea of you go from one thing to another. Dream interpretation. إن كنتم للرؤيا تعبرون. Dream interpretation is you go from one world to another and explain one dimension, which is dreams, into words. Or ta'bir, when you explain something, when you express something. All of this has the notion in Arabic of a bridge or a crossing. You cross from something to something. The same notion also means that there's a lesson that you learned. You go from the experience to the lesson of that experience. Next hadith. وكل نجدة يحتاج إلى العقل وكل معونة تحتاج إلى التجارب. This is part of a much longer hadith. Imam Ali alayhi salam says, and every act of valor, of bravery, of great honor, requires intellect, and every act of assistance requires experience. The Imam here is talking about, you want to be able to help someone else. Do you have experience in what you're about to help them? Your experience will put you in a different category of being able to help. And the opposite, when you go seeking help, the Imam is also here saying, go for the person who has experience with this. Not just theoretical knowledge. من قلت تجربته خدع ومن كثرت تجربته قلت غرته. These can be completely two separate statements. The first one, من قلت تجربته خدع. The person who lacks experience, the less experience you have, the more prone you are to getting tricked, getting duped, getting played, not knowing what's happening. وَمَنْ كَثُرَتْ تَجْرِبَتُهُ قَلَّتْ غِرَّتُهُ. And the one who has more experience should, again, also be someone who is a lot more humble, a lot more arrogant. Because you've made the mistakes. You know how easy it is to make the mistakes. You understand your worth. Mistakes are part of life, part of experience. It's normal. The person who never actually does anything, you never experienced, you just know in theory, you never make a mistake. Right? You never do. And so long as you don't do, there is no room for you to make a mistake. In any case. Next hadith. From Imam Ali alayhi salam, كَفَى بِالتَّجَارِبِ مُؤَدِّبًا. Experience or experiences are enough of a teacher or enough of a trainer. As you experience things and you make mistakes, those by themselves are going to teach you and train you. You don't need another teacher. Experience will teach you. Next hadith. من أحكم التجارب سلم من المعاطب. Very similar to the previous hadith that we just went through. Whoever masters the experiences is safe from dangers. Because you know what, at work you may call them, you know where the alligators are. You've gone through them yourself. Whoever masters the experiences is safe from dangers, and whoever feels no need for experience is blind to consequence. You're going to have a lot of trouble seeing where this is going to lead to, because you've never gone through it. You can't imagine how this may unfold. And then there is this passage that is part of the letter to Imam Ali alayhi salam, writing a letter to his son. وَإِيَّاكَ وَالْإِتِّكَالُ عَلَى الْمُنَى فَإِنَّهَا بَضَائِعُ النُّوكَى وَالْعَقْلُ حِفْظُ التَّجَارِبِ وَخَيْرُ مَا جَرَّبْتَ مَا وَعَظَكَ. So there's 3 statements here. The first one, and beware of relying upon hopes. I've talked about this one in the past. Why? There are people who have amazing aspirations and plans and dreams and hopes. The Imam says that by itself is not a merchandise that you can use to do anything. That by itself is nothing. You have to act. You have to put in action. You have to put in work. Ideas by themselves are not enough. Hopes, just empty hopes, that I hope this happens and I dream that happens. He says this is the merchandise of the foolish. A nuka or a nauka is the plural of the person who, in our words, we would say someone who's stupid. This is what the Imam's saying. Someone who lacks intelligence. This is the merchandise, the Imam says. Their merchandise, what they transact in, are empty hopes. That's not enough. You have to put in work. And then he says, and reason or wisdom or intellect lies in preserving the lessons of experience. In a way, he's saying reason is that you remember all of the past experiences. All of this is in one place. That place is reason, wisdom, intellect. And then he says, and the best of what you have experienced is that which serves to admonish you. Is every experience good? No. Should we just go and get more and more experiences by itself? No. The Imam here is saying, going through experiences, there are good experiences for you and not so good. Which ones are the good ones? The ones that serve you, that give you a'idha, that give you advice, that give you lessons, that make you be able to improve yourself. This is the experience we are talking about. Next hadith from Imam Ali alayhi salam. Again from the letter of the Imam. He says, so he's writing to his son. He says, فَبَادَرْتُكَ بِالْأَدَبِ قَبْلَ أَنْ يَقْسُوَ قَلْبُكَ وَيَشْتَغِلَ لُبُّكَ لِتَسْتَقْبِلَ بِجِدِّ رَأْيِكَ مَا قَدْ كَفَاكَ أَهْلُ التَّجَارُبِ بُغْيَتُهُ وَتَجْرِبَتُهُ. He says, so I hastened after he tells his son what he is worth to him and his value to him and how important he is to him. He says, so I hastened to cultivate your character before your heart hardened and your mind became preoccupied. So you're still young. Before your heart hardened and your mind became preoccupied, because you're going to get more and more responsibilities in life. And so this is going to preoccupy your mind. You're still young. You still have few things to deal with. And then he says, so that with the clarity of your own judgment, you may receive what the people of experience have already sought and attained on your behalf. A huge part of reason, a huge part of wisdom, a huge part of intellect is to learn from the mistakes of others. Don't go make their mistakes. You don't need to make every mistake yourself. Learn from the mistakes of others. Learn from the experience of others. They made the mistake, the Imam says, on your behalf. They did the experience, they had the experience on your behalf. Just go learn it from them. And then he continues, their aims and their lessons. Thus you would be spared the burden of searching and protected from the pains of experimentation. Making mistakes is painful. You can be spared, but you need to learn from their experiences so that you don't have to go through the experimentation yourself. What reached us only after long pursuit, now he's talking about himself and his generation. He says, what reached us only after a long pursuit, a lot of hard work, now comes to you readily. I'm just giving it to you. And what remained obscure to us has become clear to you. From Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, دراسة العلم لقاح المعرفة وطول التجارب زيادة في العقل والشرف التقوى والقنوع راحة الأبدان ومن أحبك نهاك ومن أبغضك أغراك. There's only one passage here that's more relevant, but I took the whole thing because I loved it from the words of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. He says, the study of knowledge fertilizes understanding. It like multiplies understanding. I should have translated it as cross-pollinates. That's luqah, right? The study of knowledge cross-pollinates understanding. And long experience increases one's intellect. Whatever intellect you have, experience is going to extend it, increase it, multiply it, amplify it. True honor is found in piety. Contentment brings comfort to the body. Each one of these deserves a lot of commentary, but it's too late, so I'm moving past. Here the Imam just linked piety with the body, with wellness, with physical health. In any case, whoever loves you will caution you. In other words, the person who loves you might tell you things that you don't really like. You don't really want to hear them. And whoever dislikes you will tempt you, or will share with you things that seem very seductive and very pleasant and very good. رأي الرجل على قدر تجربته. We're back to Imam Ali alayhi salam. He says a person's judgment or a man's judgment is in accordance with their experience. You could say it's like it's worth their experience. Before I tell you, when you tell me this so-and-so has that opinion about so-and-so matter, I should ask right away, and how much experience do they have in that? If they have no experience, that opinion is perhaps not worth as much. How much do they know what they're talking about based on experience? The person's judgment is in accordance with their experience. العقل غريزة تزيد بالعلم والتجارب. العقل, intellect, is a faculty that increases with knowledge and experience. Reason is an ability. You can do something. You have a faculty. How do you grow that faculty? You grow it with more knowledge, and you grow it with more experiences in life. We're done with the ahadith. And I wanted to finish with this. Inshallah, it wasn't too long. I know it's late. A few books related to this topic. Very quickly. And perhaps later in the series, I'm going to come back to some of these books. Here I'm focusing on them from the point of view that we just talked about, which is experience. The importance of experience. The first book from John Dewey, Experience and Education. You'll see the year 1938. The reason I listed is that what he put in that book is still being used today. And most of the books that have come out in the disciplines of education, of training and learning, even professional development, as I'll mention in the next book, rely on the principles in that book from John Dewey. So what does he talk about here? He focuses on the notion of what is now very well known in this field called experiential learning. That you learn through experience. And I'm going to talk about that a bit more in the next one. You'll see how it is being used today. In here, he was focused on education. So when we talk about education, I'll perhaps come back to some of these books. He says the way the schools are set up, the universities are set up, the way we are making people learn should not be this way. This should be a small part of the learning, where you have someone just talking to you, speaking to you, and you learn this way. This is not experiential learning. So here he creates what is going to become a cycle. You have to go through a cycle, and today there are entire learning systems based on this. So he says it has to start with you experiment, and then you think about that experimentation, and that allows you to learn something from what you just experimented with. And all of this starts with what he calls participation or engagement. It has to be part of life. It cannot be something that you learn as a theory, as abstract, and the connections to life don't seem to be clear. There has to be a clear linkage with your life, and it becomes something that you participate in. You have to rethink how you educate. You have to rethink how you train. You have to rethink learning in this way, that it is based on experimentation, doing yourself, and you learn from that. And I talked a little bit about this in a previous lecture. On this, they built the idea of creating a safe environment so that when you are experimenting, the risk is limited, right? So the theory out of practice, not apart from. Theory, he says, comes out of practice. Oftentimes, it looks like these are two distinct things. There are those who do, and then there are those who analyze. He says those who analyze, their analysis should come out of them doing. These are not two separate things, but it has become two separate things. As though there is something called theory, and there's something that is practice and experimentation. Those two are one thing. And the theory has to come out of the experimentation, not be disconnected from it. Okay, I'll stop here. So education, this is a little quote from him. Education is not preparation for life. Education is life, as he writes in his book. The second book, David Kolb, Experiential Learning. So again, these are the ideas now being put into a system, and these are the systems that they use today. If you are part of a corporation and you are being trained, developed as a future leader, executive leader, and so on and so forth, a lot of this is being applied. Experiential learning. Okay, so experience as the source of learning and development. And there's a whole system that is put in place. I'm not going to go through it. But in short, today, I just went through this in this past week. I was working with some groups, and in those groups there are people who are frustrated that they are not getting jobs at a higher level. And so their questions are, why don't you tell us what training do we need so that we go get that training so that we can be ready for the next level? Has nothing to do with training. What you lack is experience. You are not considered for those other jobs because you don't lack training. What you lack is experience. They want to see that you have done this. You have to be able to demonstrate that you have done this. If for this job I need you to show that you have managed human beings, all the training in the world is not going to be enough unless you have managed human beings as part of your training. This is not theoretical, this is experiential. And this is why today, when you develop leaders, it's not just courses in a classroom. There's an experiential portion where you put people through an assignment or a project where they have to do. It could be a week and it could be a year. But you're doing yourself. You're thrown into it, and this is how you learn. You already are prepared with the theory, but we're not sure how this is going to translate once you are applying. This is experiential learning. The next book, Michael Polanyi, the tacit dimension. This is a whole idea. I mention it quickly. I think it's interesting. I won't spend too much time on it. The tacit dimension, what he calls tacit expertise or tacit knowledge, is knowledge that you acquire by doing for a very long time. So let's say someone, for instance, has been a surgeon for a long time. And now they want to train others to become surgeons. So this person has done, 10,000 operations, 10,000 surgeries. And now they want to train others. This training, this person might write a book to explain how this surgery is done. But what they have to teach, a lot of what they have to teach, is not something you can put words to in a book. A lot of it will not have words to be presented in that way. Because this person has acquired a mastery on the job. And every job may be a little bit different. And there's a gut feeling that is always at play. And he's reacting to a context. All of that is not teachable, not through a book, not through theory. If you were to spend time with this person and you do it and they tell you, how does it feel in your hand when your hand is touching this? How does it feel? Do you feel like this is working the way it's supposed to? Is it too tight or is it too loose? Not all of that is teachable. It's one thing to say the words. It's a completely other thing to actually do it yourself. This is what he refers to as tacit knowledge. So this idea that a lot of the expertise that we need is actually expertise that we know more than we can tell, he says. When you acquire expertise, this is not always expertise you know how to tell properly. So what you know, which is tacit knowledge, is not necessarily something that you can tell. And then he says expertise is embodied. Expertise is not something you find in a book. Expertise is something you find in a human being, in the full body of the human being, and how they apply it. So this is a mix of skill, intuition, and practice. All of them together. And this is not transferable through a book. Next book, Robert Pirsig. And so these are two books I put together. The first one is Robert Pirsig. This is well known, 1974. The second one is called Shop Class as Soulcraft. They're kind of similar. My comments here quickly are a lot more about the first one. The second one is not a novel. The first one is a novel. It's called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Zen, for those who know or don't know, this is Zen Buddhism, right? To be Zen. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. The second book is Shop Class as Soulcraft. Similar ideas. These authors, by the way, if you want to go back to the philosophical roots of these types of works, perhaps the philosopher who directly wrote about this was Martin Heidegger, and in a way, Karl Marx. What they were reacting to is that the human being is becoming alienated from their world. And so what they're saying in Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance is basically these people are doing, it's a novel, but it's a philosophical novel. You don't really read it for the story. You read it more for the philosophy that it's trying to present in the form of a story. The second book, no, it's entirely nonfiction. They have a similar idea that there is a huge dignity and a huge honor that has been lost in modern society because modern society values theory, values purely intellectual work, and much less manual work. And so these books are trying to say that it is very good for us to go back to honoring and dignifying and valuing the work you do with your own hands. The peace that it gives you, the sense of pride that it gives you, the patience that it teaches you, the mistakes that you have to go through, and you're always doing something valuable because it has a concrete effect in front of you, as opposed to being, part of a corporation working on reports, one after the other, year in, year out, and you have no clue what is happening because you're part of a system. And you have nothing to show for it after 35 years of a career. Whereas if you're working with your hands, it's completely different, and it teaches you virtues that you do not get by doing the only intellectual work. Okay, I thought I would mention that because it's another way of understanding experience and experimentation. I mention it quickly, they're worth knowing. So they say, for instance, so yes, it's a novel quality understanding from mind plus hand plus world. That you are present in the world. You're not detached from the world by being part of some corporation, for instance. What you're working on, if you're working on with your hands, you're working on something that is real, that is part of the real world. Whereas the stuff that you're doing that is detached from this, working with your mind and hand and world, is going to be something sterile. That does not produce anything, that generates anything, that connects to anything. It's sterile. It stops there. In any case. So, and of course, a lot of this is, on one side, it's a critique of modern society and the crises of modern society. And another way, it's a critique of the education system. Okay, in any case. And the last one is John Stuart Mill in his autobiography. John Stuart Mill was a big philosopher in his time, in his society. But what's special about him in the philosophy world, John Stuart Mill was considered a prodigy. He was trained, his father wanted to make him into a genius from a very young age. So he provided for him, the most intensive way of being trained at the earliest age possible, and so on and so forth. And so in his autobiography, he writes about this. And he says that the more he lived in life, the more you know earlier, the more you think you know. And then you go through life. And then you actually go through experiences. The things that you thought you knew because you've read 62 books about them. You're actually now going through it yourself. And you see that going through it yourself has nothing to do with the books that you read. Those might help, they might add perspective, but going through it yourself, your own experience of it is completely different. And so he writes that he feels he was stunted until he had his real life experiences. That's when he learned. Okay, and he was someone considered very successful in life and so on and so forth afterwards. But this is the idea of the importance of experience and experimentation, to link it back and kind of complement the discussion we just had from our religion. I'm going to stop here. This was going to be the introduction to the first type of knowledge. So I don't want to go into it right away. I just want to introduce it with a bit of a couple of passages from Imam Ali alayhi salam, these two passages. So I'm going to leave it until next time we meet, inshallah. We will officially start introducing the first type. So we're done with the general. There's a lot more, but I think we covered the main ones that we wanted to, of the general principles. And now, inshallah, we will talk about, and we won't spend too much time on religion as the first type of knowledge, but there are key ideas we need to get out, and key types of knowledge within religion that have been explicitly mentioned in our ahadith and in the Holy Quran, we need to highlight quickly, and then we'll move beyond religion to the other types of knowledge, inshallah. If there is interest and appetite and wakefulness, we can take a few questions or comments from any of you. Otherwise, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Any questions, concerns, comments? All clear and good, and it's too late perhaps in the night. تفضلوا.
We've talked a lot about the importance of sincerity
Yes.
behind an intention as a driver to your deeds.
Yes.
And to the knowledge, like how one wields the knowledge and understanding. And I'm just wondering, do you have any citations around like how one appropriately self-assesses their sincerity?
It's a very good question. So the question, if anyone missed it, it's how does one assess their own sincerity, and whether we have any direct references to that. So this is a big topic. We spent, I don't know if anyone can remind me how many lectures on this. So if you want the longer version, there are, I'm going to say, probably over 10 lectures, perhaps around 12 or 14 lectures that we spent on the topic of intention and sincerity and the importance of those two notions. In fact, they are the same notion, by the way. It's just that sincerity is the highest form, the purest form of the intent, right? Your intent is your niyyah, your intention. Why do you do something, or what do you want to do with it? And the highest form of that is your ikhlas, that you are actually able to do it in a way that is purely, entirely, absolutely only for the sake of God. And you do it, and even that has multiple ranks, layers, levels, and so on and so forth. So in short, the criteria simply becomes, to the extent that you are truly doing this because you're doing it out of the purity of the intent, that's your sincerity. A lot of what we do in our lives is not based on that. We do a lot just because others are watching. We do a lot just because. And you remove all of that, and sometimes you don't have enough of a driver to do it. And sometimes, and I talked about that when we had those discussions, sometimes we want to be too purist and unrealistic. And our religion does not want us to jump steps, because that is usually where people fail. If I know that I'm struggling, let's say, I know that I am struggling with my religion, and for instance, I'm struggling with my prayers. And if I wanted to have the highest level of sincerity, when I perform my prayer, it should be truly and sincerely and only for God. Which means that the fewer people know about this, the better, because it's something that I'm doing between myself and God. Okay? Okay. We all agree on that. This is the upper limit, as they would say in math. Okay? This is my upper limit. The truth is, though, upper limit, if we want to be blunt, upper limit is not for people like me who are struggling with something. Upper limit is for people who are in control and have been doing really well, and they want to move to the next level. So they should start aiming for the upper limits. I should know what my upper limits are. I should always know that I need to aspire towards that, but I also have to be realistic. And our religion does not say that being realistic is bad. In fact, it teaches us to be as realistic as possible. And so I don't remember if, I'll give one hadith, and I don't remember if I gave that hadith as part of the sincerity discussion or elsewhere, but there's a hadith in which the Imams say that there are many benefits to going to mosques. It's really good, and here are some benefits to attending mosques. And the benefits that the Imam mentions, of course, some of them are spiritual. When people are praying together, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to accept people's deeds. Because when I pray together, I'm the only one praying, and I know that I'm sinning, and I know I have shortcomings, and I know my prayers are full of, insincerity. But to my knowledge and in my eyes, this person next to me is a good person. I don't know about their sins. I don't know that this is a bad person. To me, this is a good person. I should be with them, and I should hope that God accepts our prayers collectively together, because this person is good and I'm praying with them. So maybe our prayers are going to be collectively accepted. This is mentioned in the ahadith. This is one of the benefits of doing things as groups. And that's why we have ahadith that say, for instance, if there are more than 40 people performing a prayer together, 100% Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept their prayers, because they've made an effort to do it together. This is a collective dimension. That means that these have brotherly faith and love for each other. Okay, and this is something our religion accepts. Okay, so these are some of the benefits mentioned. I want to focus on one of the benefits, or they're lumped together as a couple of benefits. The Imams say, also as part of the benefits, is that you will be, while in attendance there, you will be too shy to perform any sins in front of people. Is that sincerity? Is that ikhlas? That you're not performing the sin because there are other people there and you're in a mosque. The Imam says openly, this will be shameful to you, and so you will not perform the sin because there are people there. To the person who is already at the highest level of sincerity, they don't need this. They're going to do the right thing and they're not going to commit the sin whether there are people watching or not. Good for them. That's not me. The Imam is giving me the realistic option. That you will be weak and you will have shortcomings and you will sin and so on and so forth. So what should you do? The Imam is giving you an out. He's telling you, put yourselves in situations where even if you don't have the intentions and the sincerity, it's too shameful for you to do the sin. Surround yourself with people where you are too shy to commit a sin in front of them. That's good enough. That you still found a way, it's a loophole, but you found a way not to sin. Good for you. And if this was your intent to go to the mosque so that I put myself in this circumstance, in this situation, so that I don't sin, power to you, reward to you, thawab to you, that's amazing. That's what you should be doing. That's realistic. And sometimes we jump right away to the highest upper level. We're not there yet. We have a lot of way to go before we reach the highest level of ikhlas, the highest level of sincerity. When Imam Ali alayhi salam talks about his sincerity to God in Dua Kumail and elsewhere, this is something that applies to Imam Ali alayhi salam. We have to aspire to it. We have to understand God sends these people in our lives so that we understand how high can we truly go. It doesn't mean I'm going to get there. It means it gives me a direction. He's walking, 1,000 miles. If I can just do a few meters in that direction, that's good enough. I'm on that path. I'm on that track. Imam Ali alayhi salam in Dua Kumail, he tells Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that even if you were to throw me in hell and make me of those who are there because they transgressed and they sinned and so on and so forth and they were ungrateful to you, and I recognize that this is all part of my shortcomings, I swear to you that I would not stop loving you and I would not stop yelling out to you that you are my Lord. Okay, but this is a higher level of love and devotion and sincerity. And this is exactly the translation of when he says, I did not worship you for your heaven. I did not worship you out of fear of your hell. I worshipped you because you are worthy of worship. This is sincerity. Am I truly worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only out of love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We have in the narrations that many of the believers on the day of judgment, when they will be brought with the angels, with the salutations, with the salams from the angels all the way to heaven, they will not accept to go into heaven right away. And they will say, we want to go to hell. And the angels will tell them, why would you even want to go in that direction? They say, it's important for us to go. And so they bring them to hell, and they say they come to the walls of hell, and they kiss those walls, and they tell hell, if it weren't for you, we would have never been believers. Is this the highest level of sincerity? No. They did not worship God only and purely and absolutely out of love for God. They are openly saying, I worshipped God out of fear. Anything wrong with that? No. Good enough. More than good enough. So within that, of course their actions are sincere. We're not saying, for instance, that this person is only putting on a show, because with time this is going to improve. You do what you have to do, but this is the intent of the idea behind sincerity is that you are always trying to purify your intent to the point where there is nothing left in there except God. And that's what the hadith say. So before I say one of the hadith, I wanted to give that introduction. And now with that introduction out of the way, the hadith simply say that the highest form of the ikhlas is that there is nothing left in the heart except God. So now that we have said all of that and we've given context, we can say that hadith so that it's not, taken out of context and then it becomes something unrealistic. And, for someone like me, I can't just jump into that overnight and say, this is what I'm trying to achieve. Maybe one day, inshallah. That's a lot of work. It's training. And this is an important notion, by the way, that spirituality is no different than anything else. It's not a jump, right? It's something that you train slowly and you work on. Imam Ali alayhi salam, when they ask him, this is exactly the terminology he uses. When they tell him, why do you exhaust yourself or exert yourself to that extent in your worship? He says, إِنَّمَا هِيَ نَفْسِي وَرَوِّضُهَا بِالتَّقْوَى. It is my soul, and I am training it through piety. This is training. This is a regime or regimen that I put it through so that it's constantly improving. No different than when you go to the gym. You're constantly training. So spirituality is the same thing. It's a constant training, and you're always moving a little bit up. And that becomes a whole big field by itself on its own, on how to design systems for ourselves where we are constantly improving spiritually. Ahsantum. Very good question. Tfaddala. Yeah.
Is that connected to what you said last class about the better knowing yourself, the better you know your Lord?
It's part of it.
That's the best way to come back to Allah. That's what you said. So I was just...
It's one of the meanings. So the question is about whether this has any ties to knowing yourself. 100% knowing yourself, one of its meanings is knowing where you are and what you need, and connected to what you need to fix yourself, and where are your shortcomings, and where are your, and the examples are very many here. What you may need is completely different than what I may need. You may, need to work on your patience, and I may need to work on my discipline. These are, two completely different things. Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah.
I guess practical ways to benefit from other people's experience. Because I guess in the letter from Qur'anic, on the question I understand, he was sharing with him experiences for him to embody. But what is the practical way that one would take to benefit from others' experience if we can't experience those things?
Yeah. So I'll give an example that inshallah will resonate. One way to benefit from the experiences of others if you can't experience it yourself. A lot of what happens in our communities is that we have people who work for a long time in establishing, say, community centers. And they do this for many years. And, after a full generation has grown up and there are people who are ready to take over, the new generation, there is a whole situation here that needs to be looked at. And every community is different, but there are also some common threads. One scenario is that the young people simply don't step up. And so you have the older generation who did all of the work. It's not that they want to continue holding on, but people are just not stepping up. And you have situations where people step up, but they want to work in entire isolation and cut off from the previous generation. That's the other extreme. They want to take ownership fully and completely of all of that. And the truth is, it should be somewhere in between. If you are inheriting that, you should be able to benefit from their experiences without necessarily, now you're going to have your own experiences. You're not going to experience what they experienced. There's no way from that. You have your own circumstances. You're working 25 years later. The world has changed. Society has changed. What you will deal with is completely different. But there's certainly a lot you can learn from what they went through. And this does not necessarily mean that you're going to be cutting off or that your experiences are going to be the same. You may have your own experiences. You have rolled up your sleeves. You're going to do the work yourself now. So we can't say you're not going to have your own experiences. Will you experience what they experienced? No. Is there benefit from learning what they experienced? 100%. Now, does this mean I sit with you and you kind of share with me everything in one shot? Okay. Or do I keep you as an advisory role and I consult you as needed? Okay, however you want to do that, that's up to you. But there is a way to make this very practical. Like I'm using a very, very trivial day-to-day example, but I also know that this is something we need in our communities, right? So this is, for instance, the idea that there is a way to benefit from the experiences of others without necessarily us having to experience. But here it's not just in a vacuum. Like this should not be, I'm sitting at home chilling, but I'd like the previous generation to come share all their experiences with me. It's like this is not for entertainment. I have to roll up my sleeves and get into the work and demonstrate and show my willingness, my intention that I'm taking this seriously. And okay, so now I am in the experience phase. That's my own experience. And then this is where I open the door and decide, how do I benefit from experiences of others? It could also be from other communities. They have their own experiences and I have mine. There might be a huge benefit in going to see how did they set up their own communities? What were their pitfalls? What were their lessons learned? Maybe I don't want to make their mistakes. Maybe they've been here for 200 years and we've been here for 30. And so there are things that they can share with us so that I save time and I don't make all the mistakes they made. I make half of them, So like this is just to make it a little bit more trivial and practical. الله يخليكم. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين.